The cemetery was quieter than usual that morning. A thin layer of fog hovered above the ground, wrapping the gravestones in a soft, ghostly silence. Tall trees stood like silent witnesses, their leaves barely moving in the cold breeze. Jonathan Hale walked slowly between the graves, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp soil. At just 30 years old, Jonathan was already one of the youngest billionaires in the country. He owned skyscrapers, factories, private jets. Things most people only dreamed of. Yet none of it mattered here. Not in front of this grave. He stopped. The marble headstone was simple, almost modest for the father of a billionaire. Edward Hale. A loving father. Jonathan clenched his jaw. "I wish I understood you when you were alive," he whispered. His father had died 10 years ago. A quiet man. A reserved man. A man who never talked much about his past or his good deeds. Jonathan used to think his father was weak. Too kind, too soft for a harsh world. Now, standing here, Jonathan felt only regret. He bent down to place fresh flowers on the grave. That's when he heard it. A small voice. Soft. Fragile. "Please don't cry. Grandpa wouldn't like that." Jonathan froze. Slowly, he turned. Two small shadows. Near the old oak tree beside the grave stood two little girls. They looked identical. Same thin faces. Same deep, innocent eyes. Same worn-out clothes hanging loosely on their small bodies. They couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Their shoes were torn. Their hands were red from the cold. Yet they stood there calmly, holding each other's hands like the world had already taught them they only had each other. Jonathan's heart skipped. "Where did you come from?" he asked gently. The girls looked at each other, then back at him. One of them spoke. "We come here every week." Jonathan frowned. "Why?" The second girl answered softly. "To talk to our grandfather." Jonathan felt a chill run down his spine. "That's my father's grave," he said. Carefully. "Who are you?" The first girl stepped closer and said words that shattered the silence. "Your father saved our mommy, before we were born." A truth that shouldn't exist. Jonathan felt his breath catch. "My father," he repeated. "You must be mistaken." The girls shook their heads together. "Our mommy told us everything," one said. "She said if we ever felt alone," the other added. "We should come here." Jonathan's legs felt weak. He crouched down to their level. "Tell me," he said softly. "Tell me everything." A story from the streets. Their mother's name was Maria. Years ago, she had been homeless, pregnant with twins, abandoned by everyone she trusted. Sick, weak, and terrified, she collapsed outside a factory one winter night. That factory belonged to Edward Hale. He was coming out when he saw her, one twin said. He didn't walk past, the other added. Edward had carried Maria to his car, taken her to the hospital, paid for everything, and arranged a small place for her to live. He visited only once more, quietly, bringing food and blankets. Before leaving, he gave her a card. "If life becomes too heavy," he told her, "bring the children to this place someday. They will never be alone here." Jonathan covered his mouth. His father had never told him this. Never once. Orphans again. Their mother had died 2 months ago. Illness. No money. No family. The girls were sent to the streets. "We sleep wherever it's safe," one said. "But we come here," the other whispered. "Because Grandpa was kind." Tears rolled down Jonathan's face. All his wealth. All his power. And yet 2 children had been living without food, warmth, or love while he lived in luxury. A billionaire kneels. Jonathan did something he had never done in public before. He knelt. Right there in the cold mud. "I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know my father was a hero." The twins stepped closer. "Are you his son?" one asked. Jonathan nodded. The girl smiled, small, tired. Smiles filled with hope. "Then your family too," they said together. A new beginning. Jonathan took them home that very day. Doctors checked them. Warm baths washed away weeks of dirt and fear. Clean clothes wrapped their tiny bodies. That night, they slept in real beds for the first time in months. Jonathan sat outside their room, unable to sleep. "I failed you," he whispered to his father's photo. "But I won't fail them. The world learns the truth." Jonathan didn't call the media. But kindness has a way of being discovered. Soon, people noticed the billionaire visiting shelters quietly, paying hospital bills anonymously, sitting with homeless children instead of boardrooms. When asked why, Jonathan simply said, "I'm continuing my father's work." He started the Edward Hale Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless mothers and children, quietly, respectfully, without cameras. Years later. 5 years passed. The twin girls stood on a school stage, confident and bright. One spoke into the microphone. "We were homeless once," she said. "But kindness gave us a future." Jonathan watched with tears in his eyes. Behind him hung a photo of his father. The grave that changed everything. Jonathan returned to the cemetery. Beside his father's grave now stood a small plaque. "Kindness never dies, it lives on through others." Jonathan smiled. His father hadn't left him money. He had left him a legacy. Moral of the story: kindness doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't ask for praise. But one day, it always returns.